actually interesting story, and I won't say who, but I have a podcast. For those of you that don't know, now it is on a break, I'll give you that. But not nominated for the Irish Podcast Awards, just saying. And let me show you here. So I have a podcast called Storytime with Clisare. The idea is that people come on my podcast and they share their unique stories. And so like this guy got doxxed by Breitbart. This person fought in Afghanistan. This person only ever grew one breast. This person lost 140 pounds by intermittent fasting. This person was working in a pharmacy when somebody broke in and robbed the place, and then his co-worker killed the guy. This person got stabbed by her husband and survived and thrived, as the title says. This is Seamus Stackpool, who drove a comedy club into the ground. And then, like Ella Dawson here went viral for having herpes. This person here got top surgery abroad because it wasn't covered in Ireland, but then caught COVID and then had a really negative time trying to get healthcare back home. And etc, etc, etc. This, my friend Thomas, got diagnosed with ADHD at 38. This person's an Irish pagan priestess. Thomas again met the clockwork elves when he was taking ayahuasca. And so it's just like the kind of oldest episodes are a lot of tri-channel people sharing their stories, but then in the last year or so it's become people, I've been getting in touch with people on various like different places to try and find really unique stories from all around the world. Anyway, the story that I want to tell you is that I had one person, sorry, I'm just looking at my thing here, and my friend Thomas again, he's been on the podcast 3 times. My dad gave me a semen cookbook for Christmas. It's fucking disgusting. Anyway, so I had one person who was on the podcast re-upload the podcast, and so I got this notification that said your video has been re-uploaded to this channel, and I was like, what? And the funny thing is, sometimes I have people on the podcast and then they don't like share it, or they don't tweet it, or they don't promote it, and then I'm like, I get really self-conscious because I'm like, oh, they obviously fucking hated it then. And yeah, it's kind of a sore point's not the right word, but like, yeah, I'm like, oh, they fucking hated it. But this person not only wanted to promote it, but they re-uploaded it to their own YouTube channel, and shared that version instead. And then I emailed them and I was like, look, I don't know how many video podcasts you've been on, but this is not how it's done. Like I want you to share it and promote it, but you can't re-upload it. And they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, well, here you've re-uploaded it. And they were like, no, I just pressed share. And I was like, no, you didn't. Actually, let me see. I'm not going to show you the email, but I'm gonna read out choice comments from the email. Hang on. Hang on, I have it here. Do. Okay. We actually had a lot of issues. I'd forgotten about that, trying to get the right time. It was like 3 times. Yeah, I was like, hello, person. I was very disappointed to learn that you had re-uploaded the entire episode to your own social media accounts. Yes, sorry. It wasn't just YouTube. It was Instagram and I think Facebook as well. I put a lot of time and effort into my podcast, and not only does this infringe my copyright, but to create a competing version rather than sharing the link to the podcast hurts my podcast stats and potentially affects future sponsors, which, like, I don't have any sponsors, but whatever. Welcome, Stig's Vanu cousin. Welcome, Spectre Nation. And then I said, please delete the re-uploaded version of the podcast on your social media and instead share the link to the episode. And so the thing is that, like, the video that I found on their channel had the same, like, title, description and the same thumbnail, right? So then hers, like, obviously the way that you would have to do that is you would have to download my version of the video, log into your own YouTube, re-upload it, add the thumbnail, add the title, add the description. Like, you would have had to copy paste all that stuff out, save, publish. Like, it's not something you can do by accident. And I sent that to this person, and then I waited because I didn't want to submit, like, a copyright claim against them, because I didn't want to hurt their socials, because I was like, maybe this is a misunderstanding or something. But I was like, it couldn't be because of that, because it has the same thumbnail and title and stuff. It had to be on purpose. It's not something you can do by accident. But I was like, I'm just going to be nice and I'm not going to submit that. I'm going to just ask them to take it down. And so they ignored my message. And so a couple of days then passed, and then I said, hi, seeing as I got no response, I've submitted takedown requests on YouTube and Instagram. And once those are complete, I'm going to be removing the podcast episode on my end. I was like, and I'm just going to tell you what I said here, because, like, I'm not one bit, I can be very blunt when I want to be. I said, I am very annoyed and I feel very disrespected by your behaviour. I had assumed maybe you didn't understand what you were doing was out of line, but the fact that you haven't replied to me shows that you don't care. And then they said, oh no, my apologies, I don't always check this email. I was absolutely in no way trying to create a competing version or infringe on any copyright at all. I am sorry that you thought not getting a response from me meant that I don't care. Please know that I actually did use your share link. By the way, when I'm doing this, they put those in. Please know I did actually use your share link to upload the podcast. At least I thought I did. Is there another way to do it? I do not know how to share it other than clicking the share from YouTube and getting the share link. I assumed all guests were free to share a podcast that they are on with you. I have done this share with every podcast I've been on, and it's always been a win-win for both podcaster and podcastee in terms of promotion. I have never had any issues. I'd ask that you delete the takedown request for YouTube and Instagram, and we work together immediately to readjust what is needed in terms of sharing the podcast as you would like it shared. Sincerely, it's a misunderstanding, and I'm sorry for you thinking I didn't care, blah, blah. I just don't believe that, sorry. Yeah, I said, hi, you downloaded the video and uploaded it to 2 separate platforms. It is not possible to do that by accident. Yes, you've also actually got to remember that it was uploaded as a full video to fucking Instagram as well. It's not a win-win as you're creating a competing version of the episode with the same title and search terms. Those views don't go towards my stats, and on YouTube you can even monetize your upload in your favor. I'm still in a little bit of shock, to be honest. Please delete the video from your YouTube channel and the IGTV video from your Instagram, and I will leave the episode up on my channel. And so there's a back and forth after that about I wasn't trying to do this, like, you know, you think I'm being, like, what else? I will reiterate, I was not trying to take away any views or stats towards your podcast. I have always used the share links and downloaded the way I have, unbeknownst to any issues it could potentially cause. I've never had an issue ever. I'm still learning how to share and credit, etc. It's clear that you choose not to believe I had no ill intention, which is a shame. And I'm like, yeah, Would it help if I detagged the videos? It will just be blank. That way anyone searching it will only go to your platform and any new viewers won't be affected. Would that help? Blah, 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 blah. There's a load of back and forth, and I eventually just went, please delete the video from your YouTube channel. Thank you for gifting, Carbon. But yeah, that was the worst. Like, there's a big long message here as well being like, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? No, just fucking delete it and share it normally. Don't re-upload someone else's content. Jesus Christ. During all this back and forth, did they take it down? They eventually did, yeah. There's a like couple more emails from them being like, what if I just upload a snippet? What if I just do this? And I'm like, just delete the video. I just keep replying, just delete the video. And then eventually they just write back, done. And so that was like the worst, being a bit of Sergio, that was the worst experience I'd ever had in terms of the podcast. And the thing about the podcast is that I really enjoyed making the podcast for such a long time. I really enjoyed it the first time I was making it, which was where I was recording it in my house. Like, the quality was shy looking back on it, but I was having people over to my house that I knew, like from Tri Channel, and we were recording, we were sitting on beanbags, and like the podcast is totally unprofessional and embarrassing, but I really enjoyed making it. And you know, people are still watching the older episodes. Fair play to them. I don't know how they sit through them, but like, I really enjoyed making it at that time. Then when I partnered with the Shift podcast network, so basically it goes out under their network name and then I get to use their studio. That was fun for a while because I was using a really cool studio and the quality was really good and I was really excited about it. And I had somewhere to meet people. It wasn't my gaff. And so I had strangers on my podcast. Then 2020 happened and COVID happened and I started doing it on Zoom, and I was really enjoying that at the time because I was able to interview people who weren't in Ireland, like people from around the world that had a really interesting story. I joined all these groups on Facebook and threads on Reddit of places where people were like groups, like basically I want to be a podcast guest, and I would post in and ask people to reach out to me with their stories. And, you know, I was on Reddit threads trying to find people, and I signed up to this service called Podmatch, which has much more recently shut down. But basically it was this place where people who want to be on podcasts would create a profile, and then people who want interviewees would go on and go searching and like enter in all the things that they wanted, and it would recommend you people based on you matching up. It's kind of like Tinder for podcasts. So that was really fun for a while, until such time as it kind of became everybody interesting was gone. And it was only like life coaches basically coming to me. I also had a few like people who were fans of the podcast on to share their stories, which I loved. I had a couple of patrons on, Heidi Tyler and her daughter. They had a really interesting story, really unique story to them about how her daughter had survived a school shooting, stuff like that. Like, so I had amazing guests on, but then it kind of got to the point where, yeah, it was like a lot of the people applying to me in the last couple of months were just life coaches or like inspirational speakers. And a lot of them reaching out to me didn't understand the point of the podcast, despite the fact that it was very, very clearly written out wherever I had a profile or whatever. It's a story time podcast. Like, I think I just got fucking fed up of it and just was like, I need a break from this. When I was like in a back and forth with somebody and they were like, I have done this and this. And I was like, oh, amazing. Can you talk about this? This sounds really good. And they're like, well, not really. No, I want to talk about how I, found myself and how I found that inspirational speaking and life coaching was like my thing. And I was like, that's not what I want. This isn't a podcast to promote your fucking inspirational speaking company. It's a podcast about a fucking story that's original to you. So I just got really I got fed up of explaining it over and over again, because people also who want to be on your podcast don't listen to your podcast, which is just, I get it now. Well, actually I don't get it, because So there was a lot of people who were applying to be on my podcast. So they were reaching out to me. They'd never listened to the fucking thing. And I'm like, that I don't understand. Like, there's been times where I've been asked to be on someone else's podcast and I have never listened to the podcast before they reach out to me. And I try to listen to it then before I'm on it, so I get an idea of it. But like, I just don't understand why you would reach out to a podcast you've never fucking listened to and you don't know what it's about. And then you're like, here's, I went through this really hard time, but I like came out the other end and now I'm a life coach. And I'm like, oh, amazing. Do you want to talk about the hard time? Like, because that's your unique story. No, I want to focus on like the life coaching bit. Fuck off. So yeah, so I actually haven't uploaded an episode of my podcast in 3 months. It says there on YouTube. I just needed a break from it. I was making like 2 or 3 a week or a month. A week. Yeah, I was recording like 2 or 3 a week on Zoom, and then I was having to like edit them and turn them around and try to upload one every week, and it just became a bit of a drudge. So I stopped. I do want to bring it back. What I actually want to do with my podcast is, and I would definitely take suggestions, but I was thinking of doing like limited runs of like a limited episode of something. So like, I have this idea for a podcast called Fangirl, which is where I like try to interview people I'm a massive fangirl of. And then I was like, but like that would really only be like 5 episodes. But maybe I could do that. I could upload those 5 episodes and have that as like a mini series, and then I could do another mini series when I get an idea or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like like the way the HD podcast has different shows, I suppose, is a good way to describe it, sort of. That's the right decision. Quantity without quality will ruin a show. Yeah, I think that's what I was like worried about. Thank you so much for following, Leavesha. Bonnie, what kind of stories are you looking for? You see, this is the kind of question I would get asked a lot, and I'm not looking for anything in particular. Like, the whole point of the podcast is for other people to come on and share their story. So I'm not looking for anything. The only thing I would ever say to somebody is that it is a podcast. Leisha. Sorry, Leisha. Welcome, first time chat. Sorry, apologies. So the only thing I would say to people is that, like, obviously the story has to be 20 minutes. I have another story. And actually this happened in a similar time frame, so it all kind of came together for me to be like, fuck this. I say to people, like, it is a podcast. It's not like a fucking reel, right? So whatever story they want to tell, it has to fill minimum 15 minutes. Like, what fucking podcast do you know is under 15 minutes? So I was like, because it's a totally guest-led podcast, so people were like, you're going to have questions, right? And I was like, no, it's totally guest-led. You're telling the story to me as if we're in the pub having a pint, which I also learned was like a concept much easier understood by Irish people than people not from Ireland, weirdly. I thought that would be like an international, but no. I was like, as if we're in the pub having a pint and you're telling me a story and I'm like interacting with you in the course of you telling the story, but there's no set questions. I don't know what your story is about beforehand. I don't want a preview of it. Like, I don't want you to talk me through it beforehand. I want to hear it for the first time on the podcast, because I just thought that made for better content. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people couldn't kind of get their head around it. But yeah, so that was my thing. It was like, any story you want, funny, sad, whatever. I don't care. I also used to say, like, I don't care if it's 3 stories on the same topic. So when people were like, I want to talk about how I found myself as a life coach, I'm like, okay, but you need 3 stories to illustrate that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, in the first couple of episodes, you'll notice that some of them have stories. So where are we here? Like with Lolsey, it was my worst working in retail horror stories. So that was like, I think there was 3, 4 or 5 different stories in that one. Binge drinking horror stories with Sean, that had a couple of different stories in it. Growing up in Dublin had a couple of different stories that illustrated the topic of growing up in Dublin. Whereas Irish Housemaid Spent My Rent on Crystal Meth was a very specific one story that I told. And how long did it go for? 26 minutes. So, you know, that's the kind of swing we're looking at in terms of, there was quite a lot of wiggle room, but it just couldn't be short. I had somebody that literally the recording from start to finish was not even 6 minutes. And that's including quick chat at the start to explain how that works, intro, story, and outro. And I was like if you cut off the bit where the chat at the start, the episode would have been about 4 minutes long. And I was like, I don't know what to do here. I just kind of was like, I'm fucking fed up with this. Like, you know? So I just needed a break from creating the Storytime podcast for a bit. I do want to get back to creating it. As I said, maybe I'll do it in mini series instead, and kind of have the Storytime with Clisare channel as like the podcast channel, but then have mini series on it. It's kind of the same way I do with my main YouTube channel, where I'll have different series running at the same time. Or maybe I'll go back to doing Storytime as it is. But yeah, it was an incredible amount of work, and it kind of got very frustrating there in the last couple of months. And the audience for it is not massive. And that's fine. I don't mind. It only gets, you know, a couple of 100 views per video, but it's just, it is an awful lot of work. And when it kind of began to get quite frustrating, I was like, do you know, I think just to continue to want to make this, I need a break from making this. So that's what happened to the podcast.